Hello, everyone. This is JJ Richa with Pitfalls Ventures. And today I have with me Barbara Russell. Barbara is with CAPW. She's based out of Massachusetts. So I will ask Barbara to introduce herself in a minute or so. Before we do that, I will tell you a little bit about our program today. We've been running this for, I don't know, a few months, and basically it's about an hour. It's an easy fireside chat with really thought leaders and people that really can really help you make a difference when it comes to your startup, when it comes to entrepreneurship, when it comes to really starting, growing, and building a business, because everybody's objective is really to be able to raise capital, potentially grow their business, and then sell it. So Barbara is well connected. She has her own firm out of Boston, Massachusetts, and also she sits on so many business plan competitions. And part of what we're going to talk about today is really what does it take to have a winning pitch in a business plan competition. So we're going to start with some questions. All you have to do, if you have any questions, you get started by just putting the questions into your chat box on YouTube, and then we will take them in and we'll start answering questions as soon as possible. If you have not, I just want to tell you a little bit about Pitfalls Ventures and also a little bit about the competition that we're running. So what do? We are a venture studio with a software development arm. So what we do is we help businesses with their business needs. We invest in resources, which means cash and also human capital into our portfolio companies. If the portfolio companies need software, we help them with that as well. We facilitate funding, we open doors, and we are building a fund this year. We are a value-based hybrid cash and equity model for our startup. We are startup friendly for our portfolio companies, and we become true partners and investors to our portfolio companies. Also, I want to tell you about the business plan competition that we have running. It is the applications are open. Barbara is one of the investors that are judging the competition as well. And also her venture firm is also willing to take in or have the winners present to their group if it makes sense to them. The competition, again, the applications are still open through the 7th of September. And there are cash prizes, in-kind prizes, but the biggest prize is the opportunity to present to multiple angel groups and VCs across the nation. If you have not followed us on or subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so, or follow us on social media. Please do so as well, so you can stay abreast of all the news that we have. Barbara, good morning. It's still morning where you are, right?
No.
Oh, no, it's afternoon.
Yeah, it's okay. You can pretend it's morning.
Yes. Well, thank you for being here. Just quickly tell us a little bit about yourself and about your background and what you're doing now.
Sure. So it's really nice to be here. I'm very excited to participate in this. So I spent my life on Wall Street, mostly as an investment banker, a senior partner at a large investment bank. And a few years ago, I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore, and I wanted to have my own investment bank. But I focus on early stage tech-enabled businesses mostly. There are 3 partners, including myself. We actually focus a lot on women-led and people of color-led businesses, although we make a lot of exceptions. We are wired into something called Techstars, which I'm sure you all know. It's a very well-regarded accelerator focused on technology. And we take, I go in as an advisor and mentor in both Techstars Boston, Techstars New York, and Techstars Air Force. And I mentor these companies, and some of them I'll actually raise money for on the way out or invest in. And as JJ just said, since the outbreak of COVID, I've done the New York State Business Plan Competition, RICE-U, BU, something called NIFTY, University of Arizona, they just keep coming, right? A lot of virtual B plan competitions that have been fantastic despite COVID. So in any case, I am very excited to answer and discuss all of the salient topics that you guys want to cover today.
That's good. Tell us a little bit about CAPW, which you started recently.
Right. So it's about a year and a half old. My partner in New York, Joyce Greenberg, does focuses on retail and retail tech. And my other partner in Boston, Jill Mavro, focuses on fintech. We typically do seed and Series A rounds. So anything, we'll do a round as small as 2 million, and we go up. We have an $80 million deal now. So AI, machine learning, again, retail tech. It runs the gamut, but typically we do something. There has to be tech underpinning the company.
For scalability, of course, right?
Well, yeah, right. And especially during COVID and these challenging times, you want to make sure that you have a differentiated product. And if you can wrap some IP around your product and have a scalable technology, it goes a long way.
Yeah, that's good. So I didn't know about what you said earlier regarding women and women of color. I know we have listeners that are women of color. Can you tell us something about that?
Not just women, yeah, we do. A lot of women-led and people of color-led companies, just because I've spent a lot of time looking at research and I don't like what I see. But we also have, a few white guys that run companies that we love. So we are an equal opportunity investor,
right.
banking firm. But yes, we definitely try to focus on that.
All right, very good. So today the topic is really about what it takes to, have a winning pitch. So what makes a winning pitch? Since you've been through so many of them lately, what do you think makes a winning pitch at a business plan competition?
I would start with authenticity. When a founder stands up, be it in front of a group or pitching to a venture group or an accelerator or online, you want to hear that someone has a set of experiences that allowed them to create a company. And why did they create it? They saw a problem, they saw a need, and they have a solution, right? So I would say number one is authenticity and an arc of a story that feels right. It makes sense. It feels genuine. The other thing is what is the skill set and experience set of the founder? If it's a tech company, tell me about your tech background. Where did you work? How did you acquire your skills? And then I want to see that you've done a lot of work, that you understand exactly who your end user is, how big your market is, what your total addressable market is, what your specific addressable market is. Not just in little cookie cutter pieces, but that you can talk with authority, that you understand the market, the product that you're offering, even if you don't have an MVP all baked, and you understand what it's pretty much is going to take to get your product to that specific end user that you have in your brain.
Do you usually look for someone who has industry knowledge, industry expertise, or they can come from outside the industry?
Again, yeah, it's a great question. We don't really have a cookie cutter formula. There are, I always think of Mark Zuckerberg sitting in his dorm room at Harvard, thinking, the student book is horrible. And I want it not only to be used for social reasons, but I wanted to, maybe he wanted it for a dating app or whatever it was going on in his head. Did he have any experience in creating an app? No, but he saw a need and he was smart enough and he had enough grit to figure out how to build this beast, right? It's like Uber. Why can't I use my phone to get a cab in a very efficient way? And I can track where the cab is coming from, right? So those guys, Travis Kell, they didn't have any background in exactly what they did, but they were smart and scrappy.
Yeah. So it's interesting. The first thing you talked about is really authenticity. And, the other thing that I usually look for is that passion. Is that something you also look for?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that is part and parcel of the authenticity. Someone that can speak with, tell me your story. Right. And if I'm bored listening to someone's story, maybe they're just boring, or maybe they're really not, this is really not what they want to do. They're just kind of wanted to start a company. And that comes out very quickly. So it's passion, authenticity, and grit, underlying determination to get it done.
That's absolutely great. I have to say that I listened to a pitch on Thursday night, and well, there was a series of pitches, but the last person that pitched, as soon as they started, I could tell they're not authentic. Do you get that feeling sometimes, like you just get turned off in the first 30 seconds?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, not in the big business plan competitions, because they're really well curated and they can weed out the also rans. But when I'm at some college presentations, sometimes you can tell that they're doing it for course credit, and there's no way that they're going to be successful launching a product.
Yeah. All right. So let's dig a little bit deep into this. How do you differentiate between a business plan and a pitch?
Well, right. So, let's say a business plan can be 3, 5, 10, 20, 50 pages. And it really dimensions most of the aspects of your business. I teach entrepreneurship as well. I taught at BAPS and now I'm teaching at BU. So when we teach a course like that, it's kind of the elements that are in a business plan competition. What problem are you solving, right? How big is the problem? How big is your total addressable market? What is your specific addressable market? What does your end user look like? And what resources do you need to attack that market, right? What attributes do you need? Who is the competition? And you guys know what it is, right? And a financial model and near, short, and long-term attack plan. And what resources, capital, and other do you need to get there? Business plan. Pitch. Pitch is to sink a hook in someone with a lot of money in their pocket, or maybe a strategic that could advance your business. Sink a hook so that that person is inspired by what you're saying, and you have enough stuff to make that listener know that you know what you're talking about, right? So it's more salesy. It's more like if you're an ad agency exec, you're going to get me very excited about an idea. So you don't have to, it doesn't have to be all fleshed out, but it has to have enough of sizzle in it. A little bit of steak, but a lot of sizzle.
Yeah, so just to hook you, that's very interesting, because I guess what you're saying is when someone really goes to present to you, you really want them to have a flushed out business plan, because you're not looking for a pitch anymore. You're looking for more details about the business. Is that right?
Right. I mean, if it's an elevator pitch and someone wants to get into your office to talk to you about what they're doing, you want to hear the pitch first, and then you say, yes, now send me your business plan. If the business plan is, mediocre or worse, you're not going to take the meeting, right? But the pitch is the first foot in the door.
Yeah. Talking about that, let's. It's a kind of a separate question, but how about, do you feel that entrepreneurs should build a relationship and maybe trust relationship with the investors, or in your situation, you're willing to take on anybody without really building that relationship with them?
It's a weird world. You'll go to a lot of VC websites and they'll say, yeah, we're not going to tell you our email address. You need to know one of the CEOs from our portfolio companies. That was the way the world used to run. But what it did, it's very exclusionary. And if I'm a recent college graduate and I have a company, but I'm not well connected, I'm not going to do well, right? Unless I'm very lucky. That bothered us, which is one of the reasons we started CAPW. We wanted to have a level playing field. So we do look at a lot of plans and entertain a lot of ideas. But yes, I think accelerators are great. And even like Pismo or Kiwi Tech that have, they swap technology for equity and give you some cash in return. That kind of mentorship and advisory is really critical to an early stage company.
Yep. It is very critical. So just to remind everybody, if you have any questions, please put the questions in the chat box, and we'd be happy to answer them. How do you, if someone, going back to the business plan and the pitch, how do you get the business plan to be the right plan? Because you and I see a lot of those, and I see business plans that are 50 pages, and I get bored after reading the first 2 pages. What should someone do to have the right business plan when it comes to at least either a business plan competition or someone really trying to get you hooked? What should the elements be, and are you looking for 50 pages, or is 10 enough?
Yeah, it's a great question. It depends. It's a bad answer, but it's true. So, if someone sends me a 50 page business plan, it's going to sit in my inbox, right? It's going to sit in my inbox on my computer. I think you need a few things. You need to be able to. Everybody needs to be a salesperson. Everybody, even if you have a tech company and you're in the weeds, you have to sell it to somebody. So if you have a 50-page business plan, that's fantastic. Maybe I'll never read it unless you have the ability to give me a 1-page teaser. Like, tell me what, suss out a little bit. Give me a summary of why your business is so compelling. So you have to be able to do that and sell it a little bit. I'm very involved with MIT, as JJ knows. I went there for business school, and I've stayed connected ever since. And I see a lot of tech companies coming out. And sometimes I have tech people that don't even want to look into the camera, right? They just talk and talk, right? So they don't, that they're going to have trouble selling, and you want to shake them and say, you got to sell. So 50-page business plans are great, but you have to have a summary that has sizzle in it that will get somebody's attention.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. And I would say that if someone cannot get it down to 1 page to get you hooked, to say, I'm going to read the next 49 pages, then something is really wrong. So I do agree with that. Okay, so this is, again, it's a big question, but what do you think the ingredients are, or the secret ingredients for creating a winning business plan?
Well, I started talking about it in the beginning. Again, it's something happened in your life or your professional experiences, career, that you realize that there's some kind of unsolved problem out there, or some massive problem that doesn't have good solutions. That absolutely cold stone solution is you're building it. Maybe it's not all baked, but that business plan is going to have a very crisp, clear statement of the problem, right? And you're going to dimension that problem. It's $1 billion problem. It's a $100,000 problem. And then you're going to really be able to articulate a solution clearly. And I think your best friend is to create a little financial model. Just go create a spreadsheet. Like, how am I going to attack that market? Show me a funnel, right? This is the whole market, and I don't want to boil the ocean. I want to find one specific, very big pain point that a consumer or end user is experiencing right now that I'm going to go after. So then your financial model is, how many of those guys can I get, or women? How much does it cost for me to get them? How much can I charge for my service?
Yep.
How much does that, price times amount of users? What's my revenue? What do I need to get there? How many employees do I have? How much tech do I need? How many biz dev people do I need? And that really becomes something you wake up at night and say, oh, I really need 5 biz dev, not 2. So all of those elements are part of a great plan to get you to the promised land. And it changes all the time.
Yeah. So talking about, you reminded me of a question that I think it's good to ask is, when I see entrepreneur startups coming in, they're always trying to make that, the marketplace, the target market, much bigger. They're looking for 10 billion, 20 billion, or hundreds of billion. And in your opinion, what's a good size? Is 1 billion enough? Is 500 million enough? What's a good size?
So let's go back to the Uber example.
Yeah.
So let's say that Travis, the founder, lives in San Francisco. He can never get a cab. And he said, you know what? I'm going to come up with something. I like the word Uber. My grandmother's German. So I'm going to come up with something called Uber. And in where I live in the Mission District of San Francisco, I have 40 friends that we use this in a heartbeat. I've already talked to them. As a matter of fact, most of them have agreed with me that they're going to use it. That's a great start, right? Those are 40 people that you can envision. It's in your hometown. You know exactly what the pain point is and what the specific problem is. So you don't need to raise $1 billion because you're going to become a $20 billion company. You may, but that no one's going to buy it, right? So if you start on your own turf or turf that you understand and build out from there, you're going to have a lot more believers and people that buy in.
So really, what you're saying, it really doesn't have to be a $20 billion market. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it might be. You know, you can inspire me, you know, in the third page of your deck, of your pitch deck, and say, by the way, we're looking at 40 people in San Francisco. San Francisco has 3 million people. We think 10% could use our business in a couple of years if we have a lot of advertising budget, right? So as long as you build a logical, rational model or a build step function that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
We're going to have believers.
We have a questions from Kamesh.
I don't see a lot of questions popping up in my.
Here's one question from Kamesh. So he says, what was the most memorable pitch you've judged, watched, and what made it memorable?
Oh, that's a great question. Last year, I was at Rice University in Houston, and a former Marine stood up in front of my cohort that I was judging. Hey, you know what? Could you hold on 1 second? I just realized that I'm not plugged in. You guys, can you take a 1 minute break and I'll be right back? I just have to get my plug. Give me a sec.
Okay. All right. So everyone, since Barbara is charging her computer, so it doesn't go off, that's good. So if you have any questions, please post them right now. Also, again, for the business plan competition, I want to make sure that everyone is aware that the competition is open right now. So if you can go to ventureplancompetition.com, ventureplancompetition.com, and you'll be able to apply there. All right, so you're back, Barbara.
Yeah, so the Rice University business plan competition this Marine, former Marine gets up, and you have to be in a university. You have to be enrolled in a university in the United States to be eligible. And I think there were about 85 companies that were pitching us in different groups, right? So this guy got up and showed a picture of a helicopter. And we've all seen movies where a helicopter zooms in and tries to rescue a soldier, right? And they lower a metal cot, and they have someone on it, and they put the wounded soldier on it, and they bring it back up. And he didn't really have to say what the problem was, because he lowers the cot and it starts to spin. And he told us a statistic that blew my mind. It's like 10% of rescues either injure or kill the person they're rescuing in combat situations. Because
oh my God.
And they control it, and they showed you a picture of what happens. And we are all sitting there very silent. Couldn't believe it, right? He went on to tell us that he actually had a hobby in terms of drone technology. And he did go to MIT to get a master's in engineering on a GI grant of some kind. And he was able to figure out how to use drones to stabilize that cot, and was trying to raise enough money to get a patent. But he understood the problem. And also he lost a really good buddy in the Marines that died on one of those spinning pots. So talk about, not everybody is going to have a powerful story like that, right?
Right.
But talk about authentic. He knew the market cold. He knew how big it was. He knew that the Marines and other rescue units around the globe would employ this tech. That was powerful.
Wow. And he's inside. He knew exactly how to solve that problem,
Right.
because he's been touched by it. We have a question from Lil. Lil says, if you had 100 points to score a pitch, which weight would you add to each of the elements you mentioned? Passion, authenticity, market, financials, competition, team.
That's a great question. I have no idea, but I'll try to be honest. So, so let's go back to the Marine and the drone example. So we're out of the box. People there just couldn't even talk. It was such a great opening, right? The first 2 minutes. So they already nailed the passion, authenticity. So if you already got an A+ on that, if it's a 100-point score, let's say you just mentioned 5 elements, right? So they definitely got a 20 out of 20 on that one. Then you have to, so you're already kind of rooting for them, right? Because they've influenced you that you could, not only do you want to solve the problem because it tugs in your heartstrings, but we have to make money, right? So I thought, well, let me just hear how good he is with the rest of it. And when he described the market and how many helicopters the military employs, the US military, overseas military, how much they spend on rescue missions, now you're beginning to see that this guy did a lot of work on defining the market. So let's say he gets an 18 on that. Does he have the financials? You know, you're right. If he got a 20 on each one, he would get 100. Would I weight them equally? Lily, I can't give you an honest answer, but every one of these is critical, right? And of course, the team are the guys that are actually going to execute and be able to make this company succeed.
Yep. So one thing, Barbara, I look for in addition to all this is really how you're going to go to market. That's like the biggest thing. In his situation, in your example, it's a very well-known market, and you know exactly who the customer is. It's how do you get into the military in order to sell to the military. But when it's a consumer product or even B2B, then you really need to have a plan on how to sell to the businesses or to the consumer.
Right.
All right. So let's talk about maybe you know, people understand, our entrepreneurs understand maybe what to do. How about what pitfalls to avoid? What do you think that may be that they should not really get trapped?
Well, we already covered one, right? Which is boiling the ocean, which is hockey stick growth. We're going to go from $500,000 this year to 10 million next year to 100 million in the third year and $1 billion in the fourth year. You just glossed over as a professional. Just like, stop it. You want to see someone that really has built from the bottom up, that really understands that problem. Don't start going from the top down. You know, we've all seen those examples of, I'm going to start a food delivery business. Well, food delivery in the United States is a $70 billion industry, and we think we'll have 5% in 3 years. Very bad idea. Horrible strategy. Bottoms up models. You know, understand your funnel. Really understand that user in San Francisco that can't get a cab, right? Or the person that doesn't have food delivery in terms of what they want, and you're going to offer something. Be really smart about how you do a build on that market.
Yep. Okay. All right.
That's a big one. I mean, that's one of the biggest ones. And the other ones that really are pet peeves of mine is not people. A lot of early stage companies don't want to tell you how fierce the competition is, so they don't list all the competitors.
Right.
I want to see real attributes. I want to see that grid, us, and then you see the other 5 guys. You have green checks in yours and they have almost no checks in theirs. That's probably that's not confidence inspiring.
Yes, because we really want to know who the competitors are and how much better you are. Because if you're not really solving the problem, doing it better, cheaper, whatever, then why would we invest in the first place?
Right. And it makes you very skittish if you think that someone that's pitching you either doesn't understand who the competitors are or is trying to somehow just not tell you the whole truth about
Either way, it's bad.
It's bad. But those are 2 big pitfalls. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good. So there's a question from Dave, but I thought maybe if the answer comes from you, it's better. He said, if I participate in a business plan competition, what can I expect in the forms of amount of feedback, judges, actual feedback, and how can I improve on my business? So from your experience, you've been doing a lot of those. Do you think if someone participates in a competition, how the value that they get, how much value do you think they would get from being just a participant?
Yeah,
regardless if they win or not.
Yeah, Dave, it's a very nuanced answer. There are some of the competitions that I mentioned to you that I just did this year remotely. Some are much better than others, right? The best ones are, I also judge something called NIFTY, which is underserved high school students in New England. And these kids are creating businesses and they need our feedback. And so we spent a lot of time with the judges discussing what was good and bad about the businesses, but we also incorporate that into feedback forms so that every student gets very substantive responses from the participating judges. Okay, so that's an extreme because these are underserved kids that really need input. In the best competitions and the really good ones, at the very highest levels, students still want feedback. They want it. If they may have had an entry fee, they may not have, but they want to understand what was good and bad, right? An unvarnished impression as to how well they did. So I think it's an excellent question. There's no one size fits all. Some of the competitions are really good, and they require us to give them a download as to how we judged, what we thought of your business plan and your pitch, et cetera.
Yeah, so I just want to tell Dave that in this competition that Pismo is putting together, we have 122 investors that are judging the competition. And these are really prominent experience, just like Barbara, Dave Burkus, John Harbison. Though these investors will give you feedback. And that's really the whole point, is really to get, I don't know about you, Barbara, I believe in fail fast. So if someone comes in and they have something and we tell it to them straight out that it's no good or whatever, it's better for them to hear it now than hear it a year later.
Exactly. There's no question. You can't be thin-skinned. As a matter of fact, you should have a hunger to get unvarnished truth from people that know something, right? A lot of people have opinions. You always have to consider the source.
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
All right. So Lily's asking again, Barbara, what's the most unusual business plan you have invested in and why?
Boy, Lily, you're asking me a real hard one. The most unusual one, I guess uncharacteristic for me. I also am a member of a few angel groups here in Boston. And about 4 years ago, I was one of 2 women. I would say there were 80 guys in this angel group. And they typically did not have women presenters. And I'm not pushing back. I think they had terrific presenters. But it was clear that they just didn't curate it that well. And this one woman got up, and she was of Indian descent. And she proceeded to tell us about a B2C. It was basically Rent the Runway for toys. for children between the ages of 2 and 5. And nobody asked a question in my angel group because they were guys. They didn't buy toys for their kids typically. They were venture guys or technologists. So I kept asking questions, not because I felt sorry for her, but I did. But it turns out she was very smart. She was very nervous because no one asked a question, and she thought she had failed. So afterwards, I walked down the hall to grab her before she left, and I wound up having a few meetings with her, and I invested in her company. And that was unusual for me because I do like, there was some tech in it, but it's like Rent the Runway. It just makes sense. People don't want to waste. Kids get bored with toys. So you get a box every month of toys. It was a great company. And I never would have invested other than I was upset with my male counterparts that got the idea.
We have more questions. This is from Gary. Gary says, can you provide any pointers in successfully pitching over video Zoom versus in person? What does it take to make remote pitches the most successful?
That's another good question. They are different mediums, right? They're very, very different medium to stand up in front of someone. I think a lot of people are more comfortable pitching in front of a screen in the comfort of their own office or home. Rehearse like mad. Even though you're comfortable, you've got to rehearse. Don't speak too quickly and really be prepared. But practice in front of someone that will criticize you in terms of your ability to deliver an interesting presentation, right? And you can watch TED Talks all day long and see how their use of timing, voice inflection, and what they highlight. There's 1,000 good pitches on online on YouTube and going to school on TED Talks. So it's inflection. It's the ability to, it's all about storytelling. Of course, your life depends on telling a business plan story, right? Essentially a business plan. But you've got to tell a story that, again, it's about grabbing somebody's attention. Through the sea of ideas, you want to be a standout.
So I'm gonna agree with everything you said, especially practice. You don't want to fumble it when you go and you really have 5 minutes or maybe 10 minutes to pitch and you fumble that. So yeah, practice as much as possible. We have a question from Kamesh. Kamesh says, "It's what's the best way to pitch competition? Is there a database to reference?"
Oh, to find pitch competitions. I wish I don't have a good answer for that. I'm sure, I bet there is, and I just don't know what it is, frankly. If you Google best university competitions, and most of them are affiliated with either accelerators, with angel groups, or with universities.
Universities, yeah.
And that's going to be the summit substance. Or with Pismo. There's something called Kiwi Tech. Do you know how they are, right, JJ? Yeah. So Kiwi Tech has very good pitches. They have one a month now, especially during COVID. And they curate them well. So I don't know. I think you're just going to have to really do some research. Yeah.
Yep. All right. This is from Paul. And Paul says, there seems to be many landmines with 5 years financial projections. Why even bother?
I really love reading financial projections. I'm a little bit geeky, there's no question, but I can see how someone's brain works if I can look at their model. Again, the hockey stick, you don't want to see hockey stick, but if I see some detail, let's go back to Uber. If I see Travis's 1-year model with his 40 buddies in Mission District in San Francisco, and I can see how many Uber drivers he had to get into his ecosystem, how he charged for it, how many biz dev people did he need to recruit them, and then I can see the next year that he decides to go in 4 neighborhoods in San Francisco, and I can see the clarity of thinking, right? How how much in the way of resources he needed to hit those 3 or 4 business neighborhoods. Then he goes for all of San Francisco and maybe LA, and you can see how he thinks. I think it's so that's the good news. If someone doesn't have clarity in thinking, and he goes from San Francisco to the United States to the world in 3 years, you think the guy's a lunatic, right? And he's just not clear-headed. You know, 3 years is typically plenty in a seed capital raise or an angel capital raise, friends and family. But when you get to an A round, people want to see 5 years, really robust planning. So just be careful, make sure it makes sense, and avoid the landmines of, you know, boiling the ocean and top-down analysis.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going for Series A, you have enough data to be able to, project based on, some reasonable assumptions, really. But yeah, at a seed around maybe 3 years is enough. All right. Let me ask about how, when someone gives you a business plan competition, I mean a business plan, and maybe they are at the competition, and now they are in the Q&A part of their presentation. How do they field questions during the Q&A? What should they do?
Yeah, that's another good one. I guess one of the worst things is you stand there and you say, I have no idea, right? Or you make something up, worse yet, and it shows that you didn't really think it through. You may get caught, right? If there are 10 questions in the Q&A, it's hard to anticipate every one. But by and large, if you're honest with yourself and you take your time to answer, you probably can get through it. Again, if you've prepared, if you really have thought through your business, and if there's a mentor that you can use to pitch to, and they ask questions ahead of time, you can prepare. But I think the key is take your time answering it, and then be honest and say, I really don't know the answer to that question. If someone asks you about a competitor, what kind of technology are they using, and you don't know the answer, you say you don't know the answer.
Yeah. Again, I guess be honest, authentic.
Yeah.
It's all about that. I think we talked quite a bit about the financial model, but how married should someone be to that financial model?
Well, I'm a believer in it. I think even for the first couple of years of a business, before you even raise seed, you should have a simple spreadsheet that captures the key elements of your business. And I think that so I taught at Babson, I also teach something called Win Lab, which is just to women that have businesses, and they take a course at night. And I love teaching it because, I don't know, especially women more than men are intimidated by building a model. And I send them a link to a former venture capitalist who shows in very clear building block ways how to build a simple financial model. And once you're there, and I think once you have the key elements in that model, it's easier to build it out, because the more you think about it, you think, yeah, well, what if I was able to go from San Francisco to Michigan, and to Detroit, to Chicago? And then you begin to realize how effective it is in helping you think through your business. So married, I don't know if you should be married to the financial model, but I think you'll discover that it's a great friend. It's a great resource to help you think through your model.
Yep. So we talked a little bit about the size of the market. How important is it, and what's the right way to approach it? So when someone is talking about the size, billion, 10 billion, 5, or even 100 million. So one of the questions I run into all the time, Barbara, is that, do I need to have a $10 billion market in order to pitch to angels or VCs, or is 100 million okay? So maybe if you could tackle that question, and maybe what's the right way to actually go about um, um, when you're pitching, to go about talking about the market size.
Yeah, it's a very timely and it's a very good question. I would say 5, 6, 7 years ago, venture capitalists basically said we only look for unicorns, right? And most of them. I think today, especially in the era of COVID and post-COVID, you see a lot more honesty in the about section of venture capitalist websites, where they say we just want to invest in businesses that we can understand and we can accelerate with you, right? So most of them have to get, let's say, 3x on their money, right? So if they invest $1 million in you, within a couple of years, they want to get 3 million back, in a perfect world. And some VCs say, oh yeah, we only invest in companies where we get 10 times back. Well, good luck with that, right? But I think that on the part of the entrepreneur, if you're selling cookies, if you have a cookie business, right? And you believe that your cookies are better than anybody else's, and you say it's going to be $1 billion business, I'd have to pick myself up the floor and stop laughing, right? If you tell me you're going to be $1 billion, because that doesn't make sense. You might get lucky and have, I can't remember the name of the cookies my husband always eats, Kate, whatever it is, Tate's cookies. And that became $1 billion business, right? But rarely does it happen. I think you have to have a business that makes sense. And there are investors, especially angel investors, that are willing to invest in a company that goes from, $1 million value to a $3 million value or a $5 million value. And some businesses aren't right for venture money because they're never going to grow like that. But they'll provide adequate return for the founders.
Yep. So talking about that, and you having the background as an investment banker, is there, because as angels and VCs, they're always looking for that multiple. If there was no exit, is there a way to be able to get some return on investment without having an exit for an investor?
Another really good question. You guys are good. Yeah, so what venture capitalists are afraid of is it's a lifestyle business where, I want to make cookies because I want to live in the Outer Banks of North Carolina and I want to wake up at the beach every day. And I can sell $100,000 worth of cookies a year, and I can put $50,000 in my bank account and afford to live here. You're never going to find an exit. Now, and maybe the venture capitalist makes a little bit more money than he would she would on a savings account. But that's not a venture business. My world is the businesses that appeal to venture money, right? Or strategic capital. So some companies should never raise venture money because the expectations are too high. A family office might have an interest in what you're doing, right? Family offices are a very interesting source of capital. They don't always want the same returns that venture capitalists want. So there's a lot of other alternatives, but where there is no exit, there's no 10x, right, or 5x. But there's a company that keeps plugging along and doing well, and you'll find an investor in that. But it's hard. It's hard not to talk about an exit. It
is very hard. If that's the case, and it becomes I guess that's my follow-on question. If it becomes a lifestyle business, and someone invested in it, how would they get their money back? Can they get their money back?
Well, yeah. I mean, so if in business school you learn that you get a preferred return, if you kind of know that you're never going to sell out. And let's go back to the cookie business. So now we went from 0 to 20 to $100,000 a year. If I invested $1 million in that business, and I said every year I want to get 20% of my money until I've earned a 20%. So I get 20% the first year, right, of my investment. And I keep getting that until I've earned a 20% return, and then I'm done. I'm still an owner of the business, but I'm not taking any more of the income from that business. So that's one way to get paid out without an exit. That's about it.
Right. Okay. So let's switch subjects a little bit and just talk about the current climate with COVID. How have you been seeing? Are you still getting a lot of deal flow? Are you still seeing companies looking for investments? And also maybe talk about valuations. Has that changed?
Yeah. There's no question that healthcare biotech has become massive, right? And COVID has put the spotlight on that. So in terms of later stage capital raising, here in Boston, New York, the number of deals getting financed disproportionately are biotech and vaccine companies and drug-focused companies. So that's stolen some of the share from other tech businesses and consumer businesses. So those other businesses have to be that much better, number one. Number two, the venture capital firms are concerned that COVID's not going to be 6 or 12 or 18 months, but it could be 2 years. Does that mean that they have to kind of be careful of the capital they already have in their venture capital firm and keep it for their current portfolio so they don't invest it in new companies? So that's kind of the trend that's going on. Some angel groups and VCs are better than others in terms of having what we call dry powder, extra capital that they can invest in new companies than others.
Yeah, so they're really being careful about keeping some capital for follow-on rounds for existing portfolio companies.
Right.
Otherwise, those companies are going to go bust.
Right.
Not good.
Right. Especially, food delivery companies, Amazon, we know that they benefited from COVID. But think of all of the hot retail companies from a year ago. They're not doing well, right? A lot of consumer-focused businesses are not doing well.
Yeah.
So either you let them go belly up in your portfolio, or you have to continue to feed them, because you have to assume they're not going to raise any outside capital.
Yeah, what's interesting, I'll give you an example. So there's a company that I just finished up. I was a deal lead on it, and they're getting more money than they actually wanted, and they're in a retail. They sell to retail, so and that's kind of dead. But the one of the reasons they ended up getting more money because they have a very unique technology product, but also they have very few competitors. And if they survive this time, while the other competitors won't, when this COVID is over, they're going to be in a better shape if they have more dry powder. So that could be another angle where, yes, with having follow-on rounds available for the ones that can succeed eventually and can sustain this climate, they're going to come out on the other end much better. You agree?
Yeah, no question. Yeah, and I think of the restaurant industry because I've raised money for restaurants. I've never made any money on it, but I enjoy doing it because I get to go to restaurants. But it breaks my heart to see, in New England, they're estimating that 40% of all restaurants will never survive, and that's a big number. But then you think of them in the environment when COVID is gone or there's a vaccine, what great opportunities there will be for new restaurants to come in and fill that void. It's heartbreaking that 40% go. But if we return to some semblance of normal, there'll be a lot of new restaurants with new owners, right?
Yeah. Okay, so we're almost done. So this is my last question for you, and then I'll do some closing. But my question is, what when it comes to the investors themselves, what has changed from an investor's perspective when it comes to investing during this period? has anything changed?
Yeah, I think that, again, to the point that the percentage of non-biotech companies that are getting funding has shrunk. And the other issue is that if we have 10 or 15 or 20% unemployment, consumer-focused businesses are going to be challenged, right? Because if the unemployment persists, there's not going to be that great demand for new products as there once was. People are going to be more cautious, right?
Yeah.
So that has changed. And when you're looking at what the venture world is looking at, they want to find businesses that can weather storms, that have seasoned entrepreneurs more so than first-time entrepreneurs. So you have to have something that's very unique and well thought through to make it out of that noise of new companies.
Right. Okay. All right. We'll take one last question from Dave. And Dave says, what do you recommend as the best method to secure a lead investor for a seed round?
Oh, it's a good question. Right now, there's nothing better than a warm introduction to a seed investor that says, I don't know what Dave's business does, but let's say it's artificial intelligence focused on Department of Defense, right? And so you're going to go find investors, seed investors at that stage, maybe in your geography, that have invested in AI, or maybe have invested in Department of Defense companies that have done GovTech, right? If you can narrow that down to 10 VCs in the United States, maybe you can find a warm intro. If not, you send a note to every or find on LinkedIn every single partner in that firm and say, I have an offering that looks like a lot of what you've invested in the past, and make a compelling case as to why, and you've done the research, why your company makes sense in their portfolio. At least that's how you get your first meeting.
All right, Barbara. So one quick last question for you is, I'm going to do a closing. When I come back, if you can think of one tip, one advice, one recommendation for the listeners, it would be great. So I'm going to do a little bit of closing, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
So thanks, everyone, for being with us today. And thank you, Barbara, for being with us as well, and for your insight. Just want to say that this YouTube would be available for review, or if you want to pass it to anyone that you want to pass it to by tomorrow morning. Also, again, follow us and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on social media. If you have any more questions that we did not answer, you can always email them to pvinfo@pismo and I will forward any of the emails that are specific to Barbara for her to answer. We have a lineup of for the next few weeks. We have Jeff Koenig, who's a member of I think 5 or 6 angel groups, just like Barbara. He'll be on with us. He's also a member of Tecos Angels. We have Brian McMahon, who is the president of Expert Dojo. And then after that, we have Mark Skeist, who is one of the partners at Stradling Gyaka. So please stay tuned. We're booked through the end of September with really good programs. Barbara, what are your thoughts? What's that one tip?
Well, as I said earlier, lead with passion, commitment, and grit. Those elements you can see it a mile away. Don't give up, and do your research. Be prepared, and don't give up.
Don't give up. I agree with that. Well, thank you, Barbara, very much for being with us today. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. It's very nice to virtually meet all of you.
Thank you. And everyone, don't forget about the business plan competition. It's still open. We're still 3 weeks away with open applications. Please go. I sent you the website. Please go there and register, and have a great day. Thanks, Barbara, again.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.